Today's video is sponsored by Under Lucky Stars. Under Lucky Stars make these gorgeous, personalised star maps, showing the unique alignment of the stars in a place and time chosen by you. Their maps are the perfect gift for immortalising an important moment in your life. My wife and I got this one to celebrate our UK wedding date. It's a really romantic centrepiece, a nice physical reminder of such a special day in our lives. Under Lucky Stars provides a personalised gift experience, allowing you to choose from over 15 different map designs and 6 beautiful frames. Simply enter the date, location, and time of your special memory, and Under Lucky Stars will render the constellations and star patterns that were above you at that exact moment. The results for your unique search are independently verified by NASA astrophysicists, ensuring that your map is completely accurate. Under Lucky Stars have also committed to keeping our skies clear and helping limit space litter, supporting the International Dark Sky Association. So with Christmas fast approaching, why not surprise your nearest and dearest with a personalised star map? Right now, Under Lucky Stars are running a massive Black Friday sale. Plus, they're offering my viewers an exclusive 10% discount on any order. Go to underluckystars.com/lazym and use my promo code LAZYM and get your star map today. Link in the description. Several years ago, I covered a Jane Doe mystery with potential Hollywood links. I am of course talking about the Lady of the Dunes. To recap, on July 26, 1974, a 12-year-old girl and her parents were walking their dog through the sandy Race Point Dunes of Cape Cod, Massachusetts, when they made a terrible discovery. As their dog wandered off the main trail, the young girl followed it, and in doing so, stumbled upon the half-rotten body of a woman. Needless to say, the family immediately rushed to summon a park ranger. It was estimated that this dead woman was between 25 and 40 years old. Given her state of decomposition and the amount of insect activity, pathologists believe that she had been dead for several weeks. Though seeing how she had been found just off the main road, it's possible, even probable, that she had been kept at a different location for most of that time before being placed on the dunes. The scene itself was a grisly one. The woman was lying face down atop a beach blanket and almost appeared to be sunbathing. She wasn't wearing any clothes, though her head was resting atop a pair of neatly folded Wrangler jeans, as well as a blue bandana. Her head itself had almost been sliced clean off and was hanging on by a mere thread, though experts believe that her life had actually been ended via a strong blow to the skull. The left side of her cranium had been crushed. There weren't any signs of a struggle, suggesting that the victim either knew her killer or was asleep when her head was bludgeoned. Disturbingly, both of her hands had been hacked off. Despite a thorough search of the area, investigators were never able to find either appendage. They had likely been removed and taken by her killer to prevent the authorities from identifying her. Several of her teeth had also been removed, likely for the same reason. This was, of course, before the days of DNA testing, and so with no prints or dental records to work with, figuring out who this handless and near-headless woman was going to be a monumental task. With no name to work with, the detectives dubbed her the Lady of the Dunes. For nearly 5 decades, investigators did their utmost to give the Jane Doe back her real name. They combed through thousands of missing person reports, though none of them were a match. They went from neighbourhood to neighbourhood, questioning locals, though none of them knew who the Lady of the Dunes was. They created clay sculptures of her head and released AI-generated images and age-regressed composites of her, showing what she may have looked like as a younger woman, hoping to jog the memories of those who had known her in the past. But nobody seemed to remember her. After almost half a century passed, with no new developments, it began to feel like the Lady of the Dunes was a ghost who never really existed. Like her body had been found, but her soul had been lost to time. Somebody must have known her during her lifetime, but upon her untimely end, she had been totally forgotten. Forgotten by everyone, that is, except for the sick individual who had taken her life. In August of 2015, somebody finally came up with a potential clue. And that person just so happened to be Joe Hill, the son of Stephen King. Whilst watching the movie Jaws, Joe noticed a familiar-looking extra in the background of the 4th of July scene, 54 minutes and 2 seconds into the film. This extra bore a strong resemblance to the Lady of the Dunes, and was wearing a blue bandana identical to the one found at the crime scene, as well as a pair of blue Wrangler jeans. This unknown extra and the unknown victim also had the same hair length and build. Chillingly, this scene had been filmed in the village of Menemsha on May 25th, 1974, just 100 miles from where the Dune Lady was found, and right around the same time she would have died. Joe posited that the Lady of the Dunes may have actually been this uncredited extra, and that if the authorities could just get their hands on a list of people who showed up for filming, they may well uncover who she really was. This wild theory drew a lot of new eyes to the case. After all, the prospect of a Jane Doe being forever immortalized in a blockbuster film, well, there's something morbidly fascinating about that blend of pop culture and real-life mystery. In Joe Hill's own words, "It is a hell of a what if, isn't it? What if the young murder victim no one has ever been able to identify has been seen by hundreds of millions of people in a beloved summer classic, and they didn't even know they were looking at her? What if the ghost of the Lady of the Dunes haunts Jaws?" It goes without saying that in the years since this incident took place, technology has advanced significantly. Recently, I've covered numerous cold cases that have been solved via genealogical techniques in particular, where forensic scientists take the DNA of an unidentified suspect or victim, link them to distant family members, and build a family tree to uncover who they really were. Well, investigative genealogy is exactly the method that the FBI used to finally close this cold case, too. That's right. As of October 31st, 2022, nearly half a century after her body was discovered in Provincetown, Massachusetts, I'm happy to report that the Lady of the Dunes has been given back her real name. She was a Ruth Marie Terry, a 37-year-old Tennessee mother who also had ties to California, Massachusetts, and Michigan. Little is known about the final months of Ruth's life, though, according to a marriage certificate, she married a man named Guy Rockwell Moldavin in Reno just 6 months before her demise. For whatever reason, she actually used a fake name on her marriage certificate, Terry Marie Vizina. Her new husband, Guy, also used a fake name, Raoul. That may have been because he was a man with a dark history. A career conman, he was suspected to have killed both his second wife, Manzanita, as well as his stepdaughter, Dolores, back in 1960. Bits of their hair and flesh were found in the septic tank of their Seattle family home, though due to a lack of evidence, Guy was never charged with their slayings. He was also the prime suspect in the 1950 murder of Henry Bard and the disappearance of his girlfriend, Barbara Jo Kelly, but again, there was never enough evidence to formally charge him. Guy went on to swindle his third wife and mother-in-law out of a hefty sum of money before going on to meet and marry Ruth. With that backstory in mind, it's easy to see why he's considered the prime suspect in Ruth's case as well, though as it stands, the authorities are still working to prove that definitively. Given all the advancements that have been made in this case recently, I don't doubt that they'll be able to do that, though even if they do, Guy Rockwell Moldavin will never face justice for his terrible actions. He passed away in 2002, aged 78. Still, although the case itself hasn't been officially solved yet, the Jane Doe side of this mystery has. and although her identity went unknown for more than 48 years, perhaps we were all more familiar with Ruth than we realised. Could Ruth Terry be this extra in Jaws? We still don't know the answer to that question. Perhaps we never will. But the thought that one of the world's most iconic movies could also contain the last known footage of Ruth, the Lady of the Dunes, mere days before her life was cut short, is honestly unsettling. At approximately 5 PM on November 6, 2020, 45-year-old Alicia Valera Esquembre was walking her dog, Leo, around the outskirts of her hometown, La Jolla, just south of Elche, Spain. A kind-hearted, hard-working, and well-liked woman, Alicia had just earned a position in Elche's justice system. Being such an integral part of her community, people quickly became concerned when she took longer than usual to return home from her dog walk. But concern for her whereabouts would be short-lived, and would instead quickly be replaced with grief. At 6 PM, Alicia's body was found at the edge of a crop field just south of La Jolla, only 200 meters from her home. Alicia's face had been left submerged in the irrigation system pictured here, and it was determined that her slayer had strangled her using a chokehold. There were no defensive wounds to speak of, suggesting that she had been surprised from behind and taken out extremely quickly. All of her possessions were found at the scene, and the perpetrator hadn't defiled her remains in any way, so the motive for this slaying remained a mystery. As for Alicia's dog, Leo, he was nowhere to be found. The following morning, Leo was found waiting outside the building where Alicia lived with her mother, clearly shaken and not himself, though ultimately unharmed. He had been wandering the streets of La Jolla for the entire night, no doubt terrified about what had happened. Nobody knew it at the time, but Leo, the loyal canine, had not only been the sole witness to the killing, but would largely be responsible for solving the case entirely. Early into the investigation, a group of witnesses said that they had seen a suspicious man around the crop fields around the time Alicia's life was taken. Since this individual was wearing a face mask, they weren't able to give many details about his appearance. What they did all agree on, however, was that the man walked with a distinct limp. As it would turn out, that limp had been caused by Leo. The dog had bitten deep into the killer's leg as he attacked his master, causing the man to bleed onto Leo's leash and leaving the authorities with some vital DNA evidence to work with. On the 3rd of November, 2022, it was announced that that DNA had finally been matched to the perpetrator. Nikolai Tishov, a Russian man who had been living in the same town as Alicia at the time of the incident, and who suffers from paranoid delusions. When his mother, a wealthy businesswoman, heard about what Nikolai had done, she immediately booked her son a ticket back to Russia. And just 4 weeks after arriving back in his homeland, Nikolai would take the life of another woman in Moscow. As it stands, he's currently locked up in a psychiatric institution in Smolensk, Russia. Back in July 2020, 4 months before he took Alicia's life, Nikolai had attempted to end the life of another woman in Torrevieja. During his getaway, CCTV cameras caught these images of Nikolai, which were subsequently released to the public. One of Nikolai's friends later recognized him and reported him to the authorities. From that tip, Spanish police worked with Interpol to gather a DNA sample from Nikolai in Russia. Once collected, they were able to match the sample with the DNA found on Leo's dog leash. That sample also linked Nikolai to the slaying of Antonio Huerta, a 66-year-old man who had his head near cut off in eastern Spain shortly before Alicia's life was taken. Had Leo not defended his master and taken a bite out of Nikolai's leg that fateful evening, both Alicia's and Antonio's slayings would have gone unsolved for who knows how many years. So I think it's fitting to end this entry with these words. Good boy, Leo. Finally, I'd like to end things with a quick update on the Somerton Beachman case. A big thank you to subscriber Lee Simon for bringing this update to my attention. As mentioned in my last episode of this mini-series, just this October, the Beachman's true identity was finally revealed to the world. His name was Charles Webb, a man from Melbourne who possibly came to Adelaide in search of his ex-wife, only to wind up lifeless on Somerton Beach. But although his name was revealed, we still didn't have any confirmed photos of Charles during his lifetime to examine. There was this picture, which, more than likely, did show Charles posing alongside other members of his under-16s football team. But back when I made that video, we still didn't know for sure which of these boys he was. I suggested that this was the most likely candidate. Well, we now know for sure which of these lads he was, and I was wrong. As it turns out, he was actually this young chap, in the front row on the far left. This image shows Charles as a teenager, which is all well and good, but I'm also pleased to tell you that we now know what he looked like as a living adult too. Stuart Webb and other living members of the Webb family have since found pictures of Charles in a dusty photo album and have been kind enough to share them with the world. And so I present to you the face of the Somerton Beachman, Charles Webb, pictured here on a big family day out, playing some sort of prank on his brother-in-law, Gerald Keane. This labelled image of Charles was also uncovered. Until recently, Stuart and his sister Christy had no idea about their connection to the Somerton mystery, and weren't aware they were related to the mysterious man found on the beach all those decades ago. For them, the revelation that he was one of their relatives was a bittersweet one. "It was happiness, it was joy," said Christy. "But there was also some sadness about this forgotten family member. This was a person. He wasn't just a media hit for a little while and an unsolved mystery. He was our family." Now the living members of the Webb family have a new question that they're seeking the answer to. Why didn't any of Charles's family at the time, pictured here, smiling alongside him, try to search for him when he went missing? We may never know the answer to that question, but there has been one final development that does shed some light on how Charles came to perish on Somerton Beach. As mentioned in the last video, for years, many people believed that Charles was actually a foreign spy, and that he had been taken out by another agent. Since we know that's not the case, the main theory now is that Charles took his own life. Looking at his 1951 divorce papers, which have recently been dug up, that really does seem to be the case. In those documents, Charles's ex-wife, Dorothy, described Charles as moody, a man with no particular friends of his own, who was often in bed by 7 p.m. In those papers, she went on to say that Charles had, quote, written many poems, most of them on the subject of death, which he claims to be his greatest desire. In the documents, Dorothy even recounted how one evening she had returned home and found Charles attempting to end his own existence. With that information now available, it seems extremely likely that Charles attempted to do so yet again on Somerton Beach in 1948, this time with poison, and this time successfully. Unless there are any further major revelations, this will be the last time I'll discuss the Somerton Beachman case. As far as most of us are concerned, the mystery has, broadly speaking, been solved, with only a few minor details still missing. And as it turns out, the truth really was much more tragic than many of us wanted to believe. The Somerton man's life wasn't filled with spy antics and espionage. He had actually been a man, living a troubled and unhappy existence. But instead of those infamous and bleak photos of Charles that were taken after his untimely end, let it be this photo that we now remember him by. One that was taken during a moment of happiness, when times were good, and when he was smiling and surrounded by family. Rest easy, Charles. thank you very much for listening. Before the video ends, I'd like to shout out my biggest supporters here on YouTube and over on Patreon. Monica Mendoza, Peter Loggerach, Philip Wester, Taylor&Monica Gruing, The Only Dorita, Zane, Brad Hammer 33, Mrs. Yvonne Rankin, The Deck of Cards, Jessie Jug, Clayton Thompson, Alex Greensall, Anja-Yekaterina Faustov, asiamina, Azrael Warakai, Chief Cochuaque, Colin Monsma, Connor Louthan, Doopsy, Dustin and Tiffany Vanderpool, George Lopez, Gina Valera, Gracearchie, Ian Biluck, Infamous-senpapi, J.B. Funk, Leonardo Martinez, Linden Witebski, Hamish K, Jacqueline Guevara-Phelan, Lydia Cumo, Nephus 1988, Torpid Chair 1139, Itai Alon, Peyton Trolling, and Shonna Geisler. Thank you guys so much for your continued support. Until next time, be sure to remember, the best things happen in the dark.